Hey, good day. Paul Sterling here, author of Argue Less, Love More. And tonight we're going to be talking about a great topic. And I want to know how many of you have ever wondered why some couples can't even talk about the weather or the time of day without getting totally triggered and in a big conflict and upset with each other. And other couples can talk about almost anything and everything, and it ends up bringing them closer and they don't take things personally. And well, they have compassionate communication. So welcome. I'd love to hear who you are, where you're dialing in from, where in the world. And it's helpful for me in this if you comment. I love to hear your comments, your thoughts, your questions. If you get a big aha, let me know what the breakthrough was. So tonight's topic, and by the way, I'll start by saying Paul Sterling. Today I'm coming to you from Carmel Valley, Carmel, California, west coast of the United States. And I know we get people listening in from all around the world. So the hot topic, compassionate communication for couples. Do you need to be in a relationship to be on the call? Not at all. This is communication that can be used in every place, but my main focus, I have been a relationship and intimacy coach for over 25 years, and my main focus is with couples. And hi, Rachel from Saskatchewan, Regina at Saskatchewan. Thank you for joining us. Who else is out there in the world? Okay, so let's dive in here. I already asked this question. Why is it some couples can talk about almost everything and anything, and it brings them closer, and some can't talk about the weather without getting in an argument? So, welcome to Compassionate Communication for Couples. And I'd love to know what triggers you in your relationship or in your past relationship. Was it conversations about money, religion, work, sex, intimacy, the kids, the family, the exes, the in laws? What's your trigger? I should have a talk show that does that one. What's your trigger? So be cool if you want to share it. So here's what happens when communication goes wrong. What we do is we trip each other's triggers and see if you can relate to this. So at the end of this, if this is something you're familiar with, just let me know that you can relate. Now, let me be clear what kind of a relationship coach I am. There's the kind that have had a perfect life. Well, actually, somewhat distant family relative got sent off to an AA, to a recovery program in Utah. And in the recovery program, he was being coached by a young Mormon that had never drunk a drop in his life. And this guy who was the alcoholic was a smart attorney, and there was no connection. Don't talk to me about giving up alcohol unless you've drunk. So how does this tie into what this is? I am a relationship and intimacy coach that has made almost every relationship mistake impossible. But what I decided is I was going to learn from them. I was going to get better from it. And over 25 years ago, I got on this path and I learned from some of the masters like Tony Robbins, Byron Katie, Richard Bandler, Robert Kiyosaki. There's a whole long list of them. All right, so back to when we get it wrong, what happens is we trigger each other. And when we trigger each other, no one feels heard, understood, and valued. And what do you do when you don't feel heard, understood, and valued? You tend to get louder and louder and try harder and harder. And what I've noticed is that the harder I tried, the harder you try, the worse it gets. And you get in this downward spiral to relationship hell. Then what happens is it feels like you're in constant conflicts, and it erodes trust and destroys intimacy. And I've worked with couples that still love each other, but can't stand the way that they get along. and they haven't had sex for 6 months, a year, sometimes a couple of years, because until your communication is worked out, there's very little trust or intimacy. And sometimes it takes days, weeks, months to recover. And sometimes you never do. Sometimes you go past the point of, what is that? PONR. Anybody know what PONR stands for? Point of no return. And I had one guy come to me. He was trying to figure out if I could help in any way. And he said, well, here's my situation. I have, we were married for 25 years. She had wanted to do relationship counseling, coaching, therapy. By the way, 70% of the divorces are initiated by the women because they don't feel heard, understood, or valued. And he had ignored her cries for help until the point where he came home one day. He came home one day and the house was what? It was cleared out. The moving vans had come while he was at work, and it was like Scrooge had come, cleaned out the house. Now he got the message, but when did he get the message? He got the message after it was too late, past the point of no return. So why is communication, and especially compassionate communication, so hard, especially with the people we love? Now, this is one of my mentors, and I can think of my life before and after meeting Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, and I got to spend a month with him in Sweden studying with him. And he says that the normal outcome of most communication is what? Misunderstanding. And this is one of the, and he's no longer with us. He passed away a few years back, but he's one of the brightest communicators that I know. And he says the normal outcome of most communication is misunderstanding. So what do you do with this? How do you handle it? How do you turn misunderstanding into understanding? And today I'm going to dive into that. So here are the three things that get in the way. I should have asked you, what are the three things that get in the way? Number one, fear. We're afraid of looking bad. We're afraid of sounding stupid. We're afraid of being pushed around. We're afraid of not getting our way. We're afraid our needs don't matter. So we start into communication in fear. The second one is indifference. I'm going to give you the remedies in a minute. Indifference is, and I'm sure that you've felt this, you're communicating with your partner and it's almost like here, let me show you an example of indifference. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I'm listening. No, I can listen to you and look at my cell phone at the same time. How does that feel? That's a radical example of sort of indifference. And the next one up, so if you're afraid, a lot of times what you'll do is you'll attack rather than be, I'll tell you the antidotes to each of these in a minute, because right up here, let me ask, what's the antidote to fear? And maybe you could just put fear and then put the antidote. And what's the antidote to indifference? And the third one, I already know that. And that kind of ties in with the other ones, but what's the antidote to I already know that? It's like what happens when you're communicating and somebody already knows that, they start checking out. Yeah, and here we go. Let's just, Rachel says that the antidote to fear is reinforcement and reassurance that I care. And the other one she said is, you know it from your perspective, but not from mine. So that's the thing, is like, if you want to know it from somebody else's perspective. So let's look at what are the antidotes to each of these, to fear, indifference, and I already know that. When you get the right, so I showed you what happens when you get it right. I mean, when you get it wrong. All right, here's one of my star students. Todd is one of the smarter guys that I know, and he's yes, he's an amazing student. He says vulnerability, curiosity, tell me your story, leaning into their world. Let me go back to that. Like, yeah, vulnerability and curiosity, and tell me your story. So here's what happens when you use those and you get communication right. And what I want you to think about is, do you want to have a relationship where communication is like this? Where when you speak with, this is going to be a hint right here, courage, compassion, and curiosity, both people feel heard, understood, and valued. And when you can do that, you start to feel confident that you know how to repair any upsets and misunderstandings and conflict. And when that happens, your communication builds trust and intimacy, and you can rebound in minutes. And I'm telling you that sometimes all it takes to rebound is a single sentence, feeding it back, entering their world so that they feel what? Heard, understood, and valued. So, and by the way, when you get an aha here, and you I'd love it if you share it in the comments. Let me know the ahas that you're getting. So let me just tell you why I'm so passionate about creating breakthroughs. And I'm talking about today, I'm talking about creating a breakthrough in communication. And my coaching is all about creating breakthroughs that transform the way you build a relationship. So it's breakthroughs around getting needs met, breakthroughs around relationship communication. So why am I so passionate about it? Well, part of why I'm so passionate about it is this is a couple that I worked with. Actually, I'm going to go back to them in a second. This is the first reason I got so passionate about it. This mom, this, you can take a wild guess, dad, they still loved each other and they got a divorce. Why did they get a divorce after 18 years? Because they got a divorce not because they stopped loving each other. They got a divorce because they ran into problems that were bigger than their skill set. And communication is a skill set. And I looked at it, and if you look at this picture, there's actually several pictures here. This, me, when I had hair, this, my ex-wife. And I went through one divorce, 4 broken engagements. I was either going to become a master or a monk. So why is communication so important to me? Because I watched the heartbreak of people that loved each other but didn't have the tools, and how it destroyed the relationship. My parents still loved each other until the day my dad died. My mother is still alive. My dad's passed away. And my mom would go with her partner for Christmases. We'd all still go to my dad's place. And he was a great man in many ways, but he sucked in the world of compassionate communication. His story was the best defense, and I want to say this so you get it. He said the best defense is a strong offense. And so he was often offensive with my mom, with my brother, with me. And there was a price to be paid. Um, this, by the way, that's me, very happy. This over here was my older brother. And at 26, basically, well, not basically, at 26, he killed himself. And he had what I would have considered the perfect life. Women loved him. He was a race car driver. He was a martial artist. He was athletically fit. And what I talk about here is that if you want to be successful, learn how to communicate with other people. If you want to be happy, you need to learn how to communicate with yourself. And that's one thing that he wasn't that good at, being compassionate and communicating with yourself. So as I'm talking about these tools and what to do, it's not only communicating with other people, it's communicating with yourself. And part of this challenge is that it's not a place that you arrive at. It's always a choice. I'm not at the place where I'm always compassionate, courageous, and curious. There are times I can still be withdrawn, uh, judgmental, attacking. Even as a relationship coach, I am still human. And still, it's got to be a choice to behave well. And so, what I want you to think about today is creating a breakthrough in the area of communication in your relationship with yourself and with others. Now, who knows who that is? That's a pretty familiar face in the world of personal growth. That is Tony Robbins. This is me. I used to work for Tony years ago. I also used to have hair. So there you go. Thank you, Todd. Yes. And what Tony says, it's a breakthrough, is that moment in time when the impossible becomes possible. When, and if you think about it, what's the possibility you want to create through using this tool called communication with the people you love? And this is a bonus tip here. I would just say what everybody wants when they're communicating, when they're talking to you, there are three things everybody wants. What I love is for someone or all of you to write it in the comments. It's not about me getting it, it's about you getting it. This is burned into my brain. The three things that people want. Number one, number two, number three. Why don't you take a wild guess first? What do people want when they're communicating with you, where they're communicating with anybody? What do they want? Tick tock, tick tock. Type in your answer. Okay. And there's going to be a delay. So, number one, they want to be heard. Number two, they want to be understood. And number three, they want to be valued. And so, to me, so I understood, to be heard, respect. To me, respect is another word for valued, respected, the truth, getting their needs met. So what I'm going to say is the three things in my mind, and I think we're all saying the same things in slightly different ways, is we want to be heard, understood, and valued. And it's whatever it takes to get us there. Often arguments are when our partner doesn't feel heard, understood, or valued. So let me find that other page. Yeah, here we go. This is what happens when communication gets transformed. This was a couple I worked with. They come to a workshop. Originally, I did a workshop in Vermont. I do them all around the world. Haven't done many since COVID. They've all been webinars or podcasts. But she came, and then we decided to work together. And if somebody's going to work with me, it's typically a 3 to 9 month commitment because we're looking at habits, patterns, and beliefs from the past that are getting in the way, that are sabotaging it. So we work together. They transformed the way they communicate with each other. And she said what she got out of it is she got back her feminine power. And while I'm reading this, what I want you to think about is in your relationship, what would you want to have different? Would you want to get back your feminine power? And even for men, like I'm a, I have a background, 18 years of commercial fishing in Alaska. I'm pretty rough and tumble, and I have my feminine side too. My feelings and needs are precious to me. So she got back her feminine power and went from feeling like he had all the power and the final say to understanding he really wanted to be her hero and make her happy. What would that be like to be in a relationship where your partner wanted to do that for you? And then using the "can you hear me now" communication process, she was able to enter his world and really hear, understand, and value him. And what do you think that did for him? To feel heard, understood, and valued. It's so amazing in relationships. If you can create a sacred, safe space to make that happen, that gave her more patience, confidence, and compassion in her connection. She was also able to discover which of her 10 core needs. And Todd had said something earlier about getting your needs met. And that is why we communicate. We want to be heard, understood, and valued. Why? Because we also want to get our needs met. If we're not getting our needs met in a relationship, the relationship's on its way out. And Rachel's asking a great question I'll answer in a minute. All right. She stopped taking his masculinity personally and started understanding the differences in the sexes. And there are different ways that the masculine's mind is wired from the feminine, and understanding those differences, you stop taking things quite as personally. She was also able to get clear on the power of her words. Now, this is an abbreviated list of the things that they got. I literally got over 2 pages from each of them. But I just want to give you an idea of why I'm so passionate about it and what's possible. And as you're going through this, think about what you would want. He got to not take himself so seriously and start having more fun in the relationship. Started to understand the differences between men and women in a way that was empowering. He saw sex as a great indicator of how connected they were, sort of the canary in the coal mine. And their sex life transformed once they were able to communicate and had a breakthrough there. He loved that he was able to enter her world so that she felt heard, understood, and valued. He felt like her hero. I can almost stop there and just go, how many of you want that? He stopped worrying about what he said. And I want you to listen closely to this. He stopped worrying about what he said and became very interested in what she heard. If this is an aha for you, just put a thumbs up, a heart, whatever. There, I just want to stop on this one for 2 seconds and say the difference between a good communicator, well, a good teacher and a great teacher. A good teacher, the students walk out of the room going, oh my God, what a great teacher they were. What a good teacher. It was all about the teacher. What a great teacher does when the students walk out of the room, they're going, oh my God, I never knew that about myself. I'm so excited about who I am, not the teacher, but who I am. A great teacher helps students to discover stuff about themselves that they never knew and have a breakthrough about what's possible. Now, a good communicator says it all right. They use the right words, they said it right, all the rest of it. A great communicator doesn't care very much about how he said it. They care a lot about how you heard it. And we're going to get more into that maybe a little bit today, but I'm actually creating a relationship app. So if you're interested in being part of the beta test team for it, let me know. But it's all going to be about communication. And it's about being able to enter your partner's world so that they feel heard, understood, and valued. And you're able to communicate in a totally different way. The last thing is he loved that they both became aware of the impact of using any language that implies bad, stupid, or wrong. So there we go. Huh. And oh, Rachel, your question before we go any further. Um, but can anyone make another happy? Don't we have to make ourselves happy? Well, let me put it this way. Yes, until people get to see the question. Yes, we do have to make ourselves happy, but if you say, and this is a common paradigm that we can't make somebody else happy, well, if that's true, then we couldn't make somebody else miserable. Have you ever been in a tent with a mosquito or a lot of mosquitoes? I was down the Everglades many years ago, and a mosquito, and maybe this is because I'm a weak souled person, but actually, a bunch of mosquitoes can make you miserable when you're trying to sleep. And a partner can make you pretty miserable. A partner can also make your life a lot better. They may not be able to make you happy, but they definitely can do a lot of things that make being happy around them a lot easier. So it's a good question. And how we communicate is going to make a huge difference in that world. Now, 2 seconds about me, and then I'm going to bounce on. Like I said, 25 years of being a relationship, communication, and intimacy coach. My book, the Argue Less, Love More book, was a bestseller on Amazon, #1 in counseling, #1 in the category for couples and family therapy, #1 in marriage, #1 in healthy relationships. And lest I sound like bragging, it was #1 in dysfunctional relationships. So that keeps me humbled. My video on Tantra exploring sacred sexuality, which to me, sex and intimacy is another form of communication in the bedroom. And my video has been seen at this point over 6.5 million times. And I'm saying that not because I'm bragging about that my video was so great. I'm saying that because people are desperate for information about how to be more intimate with each other, how to connect at a deeper level. And that is like a 6 minutes that will help you there. All right. So here we go. The antidote to fear is what? Courage. And how do you know when you're being courageous? And I love the work of Brene Brown. If you haven't seen her on YouTube, definitely go there. So diving into courage, how do you know when you're being courageous? There is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. So how many of you like being brave, bold, courageous? Just put a thumbs up or put a yes, please, or yes, whatever it is. How many of you like being brave, bold, courageous? I'll give you a second to answer that one. And then the second question, and this is something Rachel's very wise. Her answer is sometimes. And I'm seeing yes, yes, thumbs up, yes, all that. And here is the thing. What gets in the way of us being brave, bold, courageous? Now, I'll give you an example. At one point, my friend Gannon White, who was my kayaking buddy, who's like 25 years younger than me and in much better shape and all the rest of it. And he would take me kayaking, and I would go on class, normally 3, sometimes class 4. He would take me on class 5 rivers. Now, Did it take insane courage? Absolutely, it did. I remember at one point going over a 24-foot dam. It was like you see this horizon line and you go, like every cell in your body to me goes, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. There's like you're gonna go off this cliff in a kayak and not survive. Now, there are plenty of people that feel the same way in their body about communicating openly, honestly, vulnerably. Especially, I've had men from military background. One guy said, I would rather jump out of an airplane at night into enemy territory where they're trying to kill me. I would rather do that. That is less scary for me than talking openly and honestly and vulnerably with my partner about my feelings and my needs. So to have courage, to be courageous and brave, what is the other side of that coin? So anybody have an idea of what's the other side of the coin? So the other side of this coin is there is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. So to be courageous, oh, it's the opposite of safety, Rachel. It's the other side of the coin from being courageous on is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. So maybe I asked the question wrong because safety, could be the opposite of being courageous. I see that. I'm just saying that to have courage, what you need to be is in a situation where you're being vulnerable. There's risk, there's uncertainty, and emotional exposure. Does that make sense to people? So if we're communicating openly and honestly about situations, and let me draw a picture so that you guys have it. There are three types of relationships. Is this a perfect pyramid? Absolutely not. But this will give you an idea, and it will give you an idea of what kind of relationship you want. This bottom is all about security. Think about the caveman, think about the days of old. The guy might have been a drunk that was beating his wife and being abusive. And people would say, well, you don't get a divorce because he's your breadwinner. So that relationship was not about love. It was about security, and not even a good type of security. You actually stayed in it because of insecurity. But so security, the second level up, is about comfort. And in the comfort one, let's see if I can draw the picture. That's trying to draw the picture of a boat. See, and when you're in for comfort, you don't want to rock the boat. This is where, it's like most people say they want open, honest communication, and they really don't. They want comfortable communication. They want communication that makes them feel what? Safe. Now, that's not courageous communication, that's safe communication. And in that, when people are trying to be safe, what they do is they don't tell the truth. They withhold information. They're trying to protect themselves. This is where people have affairs, but they don't talk about opening the relationship and being polyamorous or having an open marriage or whatever. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying that in the world of comfort, what we're communicating is things to keep us feeling safe. Up here is growth. Now, think about what kind of a relationship do you want? Do you want one that's all about security, comfort, or growth? And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. But my first divorce, there were a lot of different reasons that it happened. But one of them was my ex wanted comfort. I wanted growth, at least in the areas I wanted growth. So we'd go on vacation to Hawaii, and I would rather be walking on fire with Tony Robbins and jumping off the trapeze and being with a crowd of people. And she would rather be on the beach reading her book and being comfortable and safe. And so what happened is even though at the end we did still love each other, and that's 20 some years ago, we still care about each other. She sent me pictures from when we were together just a few months ago. So what happened is she was interested in comfort. I was interested in growth. Which one are you interested in? And it's not like you spend 100% of your time there, but it is a major focus. So if you want a relationship that's courageous and brave and bold, you're going to be in the area of growth, because vulnerability and fear and discomfort come with it. It's not safe. Now, hopefully people are getting this. This is when you get triggered. See, this is important, because what I'm talking about in communication is having a communication breakthrough. And you don't need any of my tips, tools, and training when everything's going well, because everything's going well. What this course is about, or at least tonight is about, and what I'm about as a teacher, is helping you when you get triggered. How can you go to where you want to go without destroying the relationship? How can you get from triggered back to reconnected? Now, what I'd love to hear from you is, where do you go when you get triggered? And there's 3 different places you can go. This is the reactive line down here. And what I noticed is when I get triggered, I would collapse. And this I call the trauma, drama line. And one of the people from the Courageous Love Show group. Now, by the way, if you haven't joined the Courageous Love Show group and you want to get notices about these calls, let me know at the end here, or put a comment in. Give me the group link. Just put group link in the comments and I'll get you the link. You can join our group. And I have over 130 hours of past videos in here on everything to do with relationships. Anyway, one of the members of the group told me that if I could just work on my spelling and clear handwriting, things would be so much better. And, I actually totally agree with him. And this is my new improved writing, and it still sucks. Anyway, here we go. When you get triggered, do you collapse? Do you get combative? Or do you go up here and get courageous? So what I tend to do was collapse, because growing up, my older brother would beat me up, and he would beat me until I collapsed. And the longer that I tried not to collapse, the more he would beat on me. So I learned early on that collapsing equals safety. A lot of women have learned this if they've been in relationships with men that are bigger, better, stronger. They learn about that they need to, it's a way to protect themselves. So that is one of those key things. And if somebody on the call can bounce over and get the link and put it in here for the Facebook group, the Courageous Love Facebook group, and put that link in the chat box, that would be great. Thank you. So that was me. And here's the interesting thing. I noticed that I kept that pattern up. I am now, let me just give you the picture here. I am now 6'3", 230 pounds. And that pattern of collapsing was still in me. And it's interesting, I'm working on it. It was just so unbecoming of me in the middle of an argument with my beloved to collapse and vanish and get my feelings hurt and withdraw. But unless we break the patterns stick with us. I was watching, I was just at an event where we were all sharing a bathroom and I was watching other people brush their teeth with an electric toothbrush. And how many of you have an electric toothbrush? You can raise your hand. Okay. So watch when you brush your teeth next time. Because a lot of times what happens, I pointed out to these people, we were all laughing about it. They were brushing their teeth as if they were still using a manual toothbrush. But an electric toothbrush actually works better if you don't do that. If you just bring it across, there's a totally different pattern for brushing your teeth with an electric toothbrush. But when we get conditioned from a young child, we stay with the conditioning unless we do something to have a breakthrough, to break that pattern. Now, my older brother, what was his pattern? He was the combative. He had to win. He couldn't lose. I ended up having to lose, couldn't win. Which one do you go to when you get triggered? Now, if I stay conscious, where I go is here to being courageous and connecting and staying compassionate. That is work. These down here, this is easy. So what we're trying to do is move from either there up or here up. And if you look right now at our current politicians, where are they? Some of them collapsed, some of them super combative, and a very few of them actually being honest and open and vulnerable and courageous. When triggered, I withdraw. Rachel, I can totally see that for myself. That's the collapse. And sometimes I don't judge myself for it. It meant survival as a kid. It's what I needed to survive. Now, here's what courageous communication looks like. I learned this originally from a guy named Robert Kiyosaki. He's the guy who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he learned this from another guy who ended up becoming my partner years later, a guy named Marshall Thurber, who studied with Buckminster Fuller and with Dr. Deming, and one of the smartest people that I know. But anyway, courageous communication. Here is what happens. All events go through this. And what I want you to do is not just believe me, but test it. If you look at this big pandemic that's going on, what happened first is people were in denial. It's not happening. It's not a big deal. It's not whatever. Then what did they do? The next thing, they lay blame. It's not our fault. They started blaming other countries, other politicians. It's not our fault. Next thing people do, and this is on the macro and the micro. This happens in politics. It happens in each of us. What they did is next, they tried to justify their behavior. The reason we did this is they didn't take responsibility and accountability at all. The next one up, if they're moving up, they could stop at any of these. If they're moving up to get above the line, oftentimes people will feel shame. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry. There's something wrong with me. Then if it's me, I want to quit. After the shame or before the shame, I want to quit the relationship. I want to quit the job. I want to quit whatever it is. And there's two types of quit. And hopefully this is helpful. One type of quit, well, I was working for the city of Albuquerque. I'll give you a thing. I was one of their highest paid consultants. So while I was traveling around the world, working in Hawaii, Hong Kong, New Mexico, New Orleans, Alaska. So I was working with the city of Albuquerque and going through a lot of their different departments. I went through the parks department and I interviewed this guy about how work was going. And what he told me is he was really depressed because he had come in and worked really hard And nobody noticed. Nobody acknowledged him. Nobody appreciated him. There was no appreciation. And then he said, screw it. I'm going to come in and I'm not going to work and I'm going to see if anybody notices. So basically, what did he do? He was somebody that's called a quit. Whoops. A quit and stay. He didn't quit and leave. He quit and stayed at the job, but he just quit working. Now, how many of you know relationships where people quit and stay? They've been in the relationship 20 years, 30 years, but they basically have given up on the relationship. They're not making it different. They just are, they gave up on it a while ago, but they haven't left yet. Now, here's the whole purpose of tonight's talk is how to move above the line and communicate from a place of responsibility, possibility. And when you do that, love and trust are possible. Down here, no love, no trust. And think about it. How many of you have communicated below the line? It's all about the past. It's all about making somebody bad, stupid, and wrong. I know I have. And I have to catch myself. The quicker I can go through these stages of denial, laying blame, justifying, shame, quitting or wanting to quit, the sooner I can get above the line to responsibility. And just so you know, responsibility does not mean laying blame on yourself. It means what can you do about the future? So that's a lot to take in. And I'm wondering, how are people doing here? Is this helpful for you? Yes, no, getting a lot out of it. I just fell asleep. I'm so bored. You can do either one. All right. So remember, we started with fear. The antidote to fear is courage. The antidote of indifference is compassion. And what is compassion? Compassion is trying to enter somebody else's world so they get gotten. They feel heard, understood, and valued. And they feel precious. Now, you can tell whether your communication is courageous, compassionate, and you come with curiosity, whether your partner wants to lean in or lean out. If you're using BSW, which is so easy to do because you don't have to be vulnerable to attack somebody. It says nothing, you're just shooting from the sidelines. And BSW, anybody remember what that stands for? Bad, stupid, wrong. You can almost guarantee if you're using language that creates bad, stupid, wrong, you're going to get resistance, resentment, regret. If you're compassionate, you're going to get connection, compassion, cooperation. So how do you use compassion? Well, I'd like to hear, this is the interactive part of this again. How many of you speak more than one language? If you only speak one language, type in 1, 2 languages, 2, 3 languages, 3. If you're European, you speak 4, 5, 6 languages. If you're American, you speak one language, maybe. I got to be careful with my generalizations. All right. What does this have to do with communication? I'm going to tell you. So Rachel speaks 2 languages and several bits. Like every country I've worked in Hong Kong and I've worked in Mexico, done workshops there and in Bali and around in Croatia. And I try to learn at least a few words of it. But I'm going to tell you tonight that you all speak at least 3 different languages. And it might seem at first like it's not accurate, but I'm guaranteeing you it is. Number 1, the language of the head. Number 2, the language of the heart. And number 3, the language of hurt. And what does this have to do with communication? If people want to break through in communicating, this page right here, take a snapshot of it, post it up on your refrigerator. This is so critical because if you've ever tried to have a conversation with someone who speaks Spanish and you speak English, it's hard to have a clear conversation if you don't speak their language. Now, what it tends to be, gotta be careful of an overgeneralization. What tends to be the language of the feminine? Is it the language of the head, the heart, or the hurt? So this tends to be the language of the feminine. What tends to be the language of the masculine? When I say tends, it's like where is it most comfortable? It tends to be the language of the head, partly because we've been conditioned that way. So, what's the language of the head? Logic, reason, thinking, understanding. Give me the facts. Who's at fault? Right, wrong. Here, knowledge is key. And if knowledge is key, vulnerability is the enemy. Now, if we come down to language of the heart, it's all about love. And it's about connecting. So you're communicating about connecting, feelings. Forget the facts. How do you feel? One of my ex-fiancés had a photographic memory. Any argument with her ended up being an argument sort of the head because she was going for the facts. It's like it always ended up being the facts. And I was more in my feminine. I wanted to talk about the feelings. And it's hard to have an argument with someone who has a photographic memory because it was like we'd always end up back at the facts. The third one, and this one is super critical to understand. Oh, by the way, here, when you're in the heart, vulnerability is key. So when you're in your head, knowledge, information, right, wrong, that's key. When you're in your heart, screw the facts. How do you feel? Vulnerability is the key. Now, when you get down to in your hurt, and why I have a dinosaur there, that is when you're in your hurt, you're in the reptile part of your brain. So you're communicating. And when you're communicating from your hurt, you're communicating from, this is when you're communicating from fear. Is who's the enemy? Who's the ally? Where is the danger? What does it take to feel safe? So when you're in your fear, you don't care about the facts or figures. You don't care about connecting. All you care about is safety, protection. And if your partner isn't your ally, they are your enemy. And if you're in a place where you're like, feel like you've got to protect yourself and you're watching what you say and you're afraid of being afraid of being vulnerable, you are, let me bring that back up again. You are in your reptile brain. Now, once again, head, your focus is on logic, reason, thinking, understanding. Heart, your focus is on love, connection, feelings, need. Hurt, your focus is on loss, protection, safety. Who's the enemy? Who's the ally? And look at this. You wonder why over, I think it's 55 to 65% of marriages end up in divorce after the 8th year. Why? If you look at this, the brain is set up two-thirds, two-thirds to destroy your relationship. Why? Because down here, if you're in your hurt, vulnerability is the enemy. If you're up here in your head, again, vulnerability is the enemy. So Rachel's asking, can you explain more about vulnerability is key? Can you give an example? So an example of vulnerability is sharing openly and honestly what's alive in you. Say that you want to make love and there hasn't been any sex in your relationship for a month or two. Now, here's one way to go about it. I'll actually tell it to you from each place. Here's one way to go about it from the head. Listen, honey, it says here in this study that to have a healthy relationship, you should make love at least 3 times a month. And we haven't made love in 3 months, so that means we ought to make love 9 times this month. Let's get started. Maybe we could squeeze it in before the kids get home or something. So I know I'm being a little bit like flippant about it, but that's coming from the head. Or you're being cold, distant, and frigid. We should go make love, and that will help it. So none of these are connecting. So if you come from your hurt, just coming from your hurt with the same thing, it's like, oh my God, you don't love me anymore. I'm going to move out. We haven't made love in a month or 2 months or whatever it is. You must be having an affair. You must be loving somebody else. You don't love me anymore. Now, the third one, where we come at it with vulnerability, is key. It's like, how do you be open, honest, and vulnerable? You know what? You might start like, do you have a minute, honey? Oh, there we go. I'm going to borrow somebody else. And Todd just said, honey, I miss you and us. Would you like to maybe take a bath together, laugh, and maybe cuddle? So there is a beautiful place where, you know what he started with right here? He started with vulnerability. I miss you and us. So he started by being vulnerable. And one thing, and that's a perfect example. I'm just going to give you another one. You could add to that, I'm starting to tell myself a story that you're not attracted to me anymore. It's a heartbreaking story. And I really want to know what's going on for you. So it creates an opening for your partner to tell you what's going on for them. They might be having cramps. They might be having self-esteem issues. There could be 100 different things that have nothing to do with you, or it could have a lot to do with you. You're smoking and it bothers me that you smoke, or whatever it is. So that is an example of that. Now, we're about to wrap it up here. The last one, there was the antidote to fear is courage. The antidote to indifference is compassion. The antidote to I already know is curiosity. So if you're walking away with 3 things here, think about courage, compassion, curiosity. And one of the magic sentences for curiosity is let your partner speak more. Tell me more, honey. Tell me more. And they're going to be curious about their feelings, their needs. I'm not going to tell you anymore because it is time for me to go. There's a lot more to cover, but it is not going to happen tonight. But I am going to say this is what I'm going to end with. I'm going to end with it's decision time. And by the way, I'd love, like, whether you're watching this live or on the replay, I would love to hear whatever insights you got from this so far. Now, what's the next step you want to take? There are 3 things. You can do nothing. I call that the hope and pray method. Nothing wrong with hope and pray, but like I did that with one of my teeth during the whole pandemic thing, and ended up the cavity got so bad they basically pulled the tooth. So hope and pray is another word for self-sabotaging. So if you don't want to do that, the next level up, and what I'm talking about is creating a breakthrough in the way you communicate and in your relationship. And I did this for years. The second one up, I'm going to figure it out myself. I had been an Alaskan commercial fisherman. We are known for being rough and tumble. And this here is John Wayne, one of the icons of Hollywood at one point for his rough and tumble independence. That's the second one. And that one cost me about 20 years of trying to figure it out. Cost me one divorce, 4 broken engagements. The last one is find a mentor. And when I worked with Tony, he talked about how do you turn decades into days? You find a mentor and you learn from them and you grow. And what I do is I provide content, coaching, and a community for people. And the Facebook group is that community. So here's 3 things you can, or 2 things you can do. If you want to break through in the way that you communicate, just put breakthrough, please, and we will have a breakthrough session. And this is where you spend about 15, 20 minutes with me. First place, you fill out a survey so I know what's going on. You watch a short video, and then we have this session. It's complimentary, and people have told me they got more from their breakthrough session than they did from years of relationship counseling. If you want a breakthrough, put it in there. We'll get clear where you are, where you want to go, what's in the way. And I work with people who've had affairs, jealousy, loss of intimacy, loss of trust, betrayals. They feel stuck in a rut. They're caught in conflict, or they're facing a crisis. The crisis is, should I stay? Should I go? So if that's interested, put that in there. And somebody's saying breakthrough, please. But the problem is I can't see who that is because for some reason you're not showing up. But I'll try to figure you out. And if not, you can track me down. If I don't get a hold of you, just go to find me and go to Paul Sterling and send me a private message. The second thing is if you want to join our Courageous Love Show group team, that this is where you can do it. You can go to facebook.com/groups/The Courageous Love Show, or you can just put love link please in there and I will respond and put the link in. So thank you very much. I appreciate your commitment to having a breakthrough, your commitment to staying all the way through on this Thursday evening. I do this on Thursdays and some Sundays. And I really appreciate you. And if you're interested in being part of my beta test group, I am creating a relationship app. So you get relationship coaching on demand. The first phase of this app for your cell phone is going to be all about breakthrough communication. So if that interests you, just tell me how to get a hold of you and I will send you the info and put you on the waiting list. I'm going to probably work with 10, maybe 15 couples at the most for the beta test group. All right. Thank you so much. And I see some people. I will get back to you with the links that you want. Ciao, everybody.